very excited today because our speaker is Stacy Richter, someone very special to me that I met a little under a year ago and have had some incredible experiences in getting to know more about the entrepreneurial world through him. Stacy is known as the Marketing Mindbender. And to start his career, he completed his Bachelor of Commerce at the University of Calgary, and then with a double major in marketing and information systems. And that was quickly followed by completing an industrial marketing minor at a university in Germany. And so Stacy's expertise is really in the marketing world and also being able to bring businesses to the next level. And so welcome, Stacy, to our show today.
Thanks, Carol. Looking forward to our chat.
It's great to have you here to be able to share with us all that you've come to know in your own world, your own experiences as an entrepreneur. And so tell us a little bit about that. I would love to hear where it all began for you.
You know, to shorten up a very, very long story, my entrepreneurial career first began when I was 5 years old, believe it or not. The house I lived in and grew up in as a child, and consequently, it was the house that my parents grew up in and my grandfather and grandmother built with their own hands. And we had these amazing bushes out in the front of the yard. And the bushes grew there about 12 feet high. And that's where my entrepreneurial career actually started, because these bushes would produce these little pods of seeds. They kind of look like pea pods, just really small. And I thought that everybody on our block would want to have bushes as tall and as nice as ours. So every summer I would go and pick these pea pods and put them in baggies and then walk around to the neighborhood, all the different families and try and sell this baggie of seeds so they could have the same bushes we could. Coincidentally, it was also my first entrepreneurial failure as well. As it turns out, people didn't want to work to build those, grow those bushes, and the only seeds I could sell were to my aunt and uncle. Well, they actually did plant the seeds, and 30 years later, they've got great bushes in front of their yard. I ended up buying their house anyway, so it was a 35-year journey to buy the bushes for about $380,000 on a package of seeds that I sold for about 20 cents. So
wow.
That was my first entrepreneurial experience.
That's incredible. And to be able to now have that there as evidence of your story and where it all began, that's pretty darn cool.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that was almost the beginning of the end for me. At 5 years old, my entrepreneurial career is almost over. I didn't grow up in an entrepreneurial family, Carol. It was very blue collar, very traditional in the way that, I grew up a lot the way most of us grew up, which was, our parents always encouraged us to go to school, get good grades, go to university, and then come out of university, and get a good job. And at that point, that's when you start your family, you buy a house, you try and pay off your mortgage as fast as you can, and then eventually save for retirement. And so even though my entrepreneurial career started early, it stalled right away. Just that was not the family mentality I grew up in. In fact, we were, very, I'm going to say meager means. We weren't poor. I wasn't living in a ghetto. We were happy. I didn't go without dinners. Although my mother raised both me and my younger sister as a single parent from a very young age. My mother was 16 years old when I was born and worked nights and labor jobs. So most nights she was at the warehouse working. So I had to learn how to do laundry and cook for myself. And so my upbringing wasn't terrible. I wasn't living in a ghetto. It wasn't until we got into our teenage years and started going to high school where we started seeing other kids whose parents actually had money. And, when you go to high school and your classmates are all driving, Mercedes-Benz in the student parking lot, and you're taking the bus, that's when you start to realize that you didn't have a whole lot to start with.
Right.
So, but it was all mentality, because every classmate that we went to school with that were driving the Mercedes-Benz or the BMWs and having their parents pick them up and take them for lunches on school breaks. We realized quickly that all their parents were entrepreneurs or high-end professionals. They're either lawyers or doctors, which is another way of saying entrepreneur. One of my close friends going through school, his dad had started and sold a very successful HVAC company here in Calgary. So the realization was there that yes, to be one of those elite and going to school and getting good grades, but the mindset was just so ingrained. That's what I did. So you had mentioned some of my education in the introduction. I did an undergraduate degree at the University of Calgary, specializing in a split of marketing information systems. I studied at the University of Kaiserslautern. I noticed you didn't try the name. I don't blame you. It's a mouthful, but that was in Germany, and studied there. And when I came back again, I had a good job, except I was super miserable, and I realized I wasn't going to be where I wanted to be, which was running a large multinational corporation. So I decided to do the only thing I knew how to do, which is what my parents knew how to do, or what my grandparents knew how to do, is go back to school, get more education. So while I was working full time, I finished my master's degree, believe it or not. I took a 2-year program, busted my hump, worked my ass off, and finished a 2-year program in just over a year to get my master's degree. But the thing I didn't know at the time was it wasn't going to get me a better business. It wasn't going to get me a better job, because there's no such thing as a better job. It's just a different job. And here's the one thing I learned. This is a turning point for me, Carol, was one of our professors in this master's program had said there's one of two things is going to happen by you finishing this program. The first is you're definitely going to outgrow your position. So you're going to be able to change the way you think, the way you want to do things, and you're just not going to be the same type of person to do the job you're doing right now.
Right.
He's like, second thing is you might even outgrow the company. And that is exactly what happened to me. March 31st, I finished my last day of classes, did my final thesis presentation, and this was March 31st, 2009. April 1st, I walked into my boss's office and I fired him. In fact, it was April 1st. He thought it was a joke. He literally couldn't get over himself that he thought it was an April Fool's joke I was trying to play on him. And I walked in and I fired him. And I didn't have anything on the go. I didn't know what I was going to do, where I was going to go, and how I was going to get there. Right. I just knew it wasn't going to be working for this sales manager at the small manufacturing firm that I was doing sales for. So I fired my boss. But lo and behold, things always work out for the best, one way or another. If you give it enough time and have the right attitude, that's, a week later, that's when I started my entrepreneurial career for the second time, literally 25 years later. And a very good friend approached me, and he wanted to start a marketing agency. We started literally at his kitchen table. And our very first executive management meeting was our discussion that we had as a company 3 months worth of cash flow in the bank where we could both get paid. And then after that, we don't have enough cash flow for one of us to get paid. And when we say one of us, it was one of him. So we literally had 3 months to get this company going to a point where we could both work in it and still earn an income. And then 4 years later, I exited that agency, and we had 6 offices across North America, including Calgary, New York, Atlanta, San Francisco, LA, and we were just about to open Seattle when I left. So it was a really interesting journey coming from, a meager background, very blue collar, very labor oriented, and classic mindset about money, and jumping into starting and exiting a successful marketing agency.
Wow, that takes a lot of courage, and I imagine believing in the vision as well.
Yeah, 100%. We had to be crystal clear on where we wanted to go, simply because we didn't have time to waste on bullshit. There was no way around us, dabbling in things. It was all go, no whoa. I can tell you, we took some lumps on the chin when it came to locking down consulting clients and collecting payments from those clients, and trying to open up our office and then hire employees, and not to mention trying to do that in Canada, but also expanding in the US, and how we do that and manage employees in the United States, where the labor laws are very different, the banking is very different, the corporate's very different. It was quite the whirlwind experience.
Sounds like it would be. And what would you give for advice for young people going in, like out of high school and going into the educational world? Like you talk about all these degrees and all the education you were able to get, and how has that applied to the work that you do now? And what advice would you give them even in their selection process? If they feel called to be an entrepreneur, they can see themselves wanting to be self-driven and follow their passion and do what they're good at, but then how do they balance that with still utilizing education to back that?
Well, I would say looking back, I absolutely loved the school that I did, the education I received. I just didn't get what I thought I would get out of it. Right, going into post-secondary and graduate studies, what I thought I wanted to get out of it was a very stable, secure, high-paying salary job with all perks and no commitment. Right? The theoretical, it's not even theoretical, the glorified corner office with a parking stall and company car. That's what I thought that university or post-secondary would get me. It didn't give me that, unfortunately, and it doesn't give most students that. There are a select few, and of course, post-secondary institutions will, boast, or their marketing positioning, if want to take an industry aspect to it, is that that's what you get when you go to university, a guaranteed job and everything you'd ever want out of life. Well, it's just not like that. Because when I finished university with the degree I had an ego that I couldn't fit through the door. Right. And I took a punch on the nose career-wise when I went out to try and find a job that there's no way I was qualified for just based on my university degree. So what I would suggest, if somebody is looking at it, it doesn't matter if you're right out of high school looking to go into university versus entrepreneur, or you're mid-40s and you're looking for a career change and you go to education or do you start something, just know that there's going to be unintended benefits to it. And that's the part you need to figure out early. Because if you're going to post-secondary institutions to try and learn how to run a business, they're not going to teach you that, because most of the professors have not successfully run businesses before. Right. Let's face it, they'll teach you from textbooks and a theoretical standpoint. They will teach you some of the mechanics, but very few of those mechanics are used effectively in the actual business world because there's just too many moving parts. So just know what you want to get out of it. What I ended up getting out of my education, out of the 4 to 5 years of undergraduate and a year and a half of postgraduate, was the confidence to know what I'm talking about. It was being able to deliver a persuasive argument about a topic that I know about. So when I'm presenting a thesis, I've studied and researched it so much. I know about the subject inside and out. And there's not a professor or colleague that was going to talk me out of my position, whether on the thesis. That's what I got out of it, was that the confidence and self-esteem to actually know my shit. I wish I didn't have to go through 6 years of post-secondary and 10 years of employment experience to learn that. I wish I had learned that lesson right at the beginning, had the confidence that I know what I know, and go out there and persuade people on that. I would have saved myself probably 20 years in my career, a few gray hairs along the way, and my bank account would probably have an extra couple commas on it. So at the end of the day, if somebody wants to go to school and get an education, absolutely 100%, go all in and go get it and do it, be the absolute best. But don't think it's a silver bullet, because it's not. It's a bullet without a gun, so to speak. You still got to go and work. You still got to go and get it done. And it could very well end up being a big waste of your time if you get the same education by actually doing it. And this is something I find is super important and is not broadcast or communicated enough, Carol, it isn't how much you read about a subject. It's how much you do about a subject, right? You don't read about basketball to learn how to play basketball. You have to go play it. Marketing and business is a contact sport. You got to go out and hit something. Football players don't go out and read about football and then know how to play it. They actually got to go play it and take some hits, because it's a totally different game on the field than it is when you're reading a playbook. now when you're reading and studying, that all helps augment. But at the end of the day, business is a contact sport. You got to go out and take a couple of hits and give a couple of hits to really figure out how it's going to work. And then you can read about it to, sharpen your saw a little bit. But at the end of the day, we got to get to work. We got to go out and do the business and not just read about it. And that's what I think the post-secondary side is missing a lot of, is the doing instead of the studying. I could tell you all the theory and all the textbooks I've ever read and some books that I've written. At the end of the day, if that's all you did was read and study and listen to podcasts and go to events, well, I tell you, save your time, save your money, because it isn't going to do you any good until you start going out and take a couple of swings.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. And I think you hit a very pertinent point, just how that is a gap in direction in the educational system. And with more people being able to talk about it in the way that you are, and really being an example of that just from your own experience. So there's credibility there. You've been there, done that, and this is what works, and this is what works better. So I think that's valuable advice, that's for sure. When you dove into your entrepreneurial world, you mentioned doing it like a second round of it. And so would you say that it's never too late? Like sometimes people can have this illusion or this idea that they need to decide their career and it's like a lifelong thing. Would you say that that's an ever evolving process and that it's never too late to discover your passion or discover your direction when it comes to work and what you do?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, Carol. It's a little bit loaded in a way that 100% it's never too late for anybody who decides that they want to do something for themselves. The question is what is their real commitment level going to be? Right? When we're growing up and, we're coming of age and, we're moving from, our teenage years and becoming an adult and self-sufficient in a lot of ways, we have a lot less risk, in our lives at that time. And of course, when I was a young man in my 20s, I had a lot of bravado, and not a lot to lose. So that's why we see a lot of entrepreneurs who become very, very successful, because they have the time and energy to do that. When we become, my age, I'm in my mid 40s now, it's a little bit less energy, maybe a little less bravado, a little less tolerance for risk. I have assets, I've got commitments, I've got obligations, and if I can't meet those, there's an issue. It's never too late, but here's the one thing I would impart on anybody who's looking to start an entrepreneurial career, whether that's full-time to replace their salary income or even on a part-time basis, is it's hard work, okay? I can honestly say that I've only probably really enjoyed about 15, maybe 17% of the time I've spent as an entrepreneur. The other 83% has been miserable. But I'll tell you what, that 17%, that sliver of enjoyment is so massive that I can overlook all the other 83% of crap I've had to go through and all the stress and pain that I've done. I won't say it's easy. I'll just say that it's worth it. So at any point, if anybody's looking to do that, considering a change, or even existing entrepreneurs wondering if they should be, you got to know that it's going to be a ton of work, and you're not going to like most of it. But I'll tell you what, the parts that you do like and the parts that are winning and the parts you get to celebrate are so amazing that it makes all the other stuff worthwhile. Wow,
that's pretty powerful to be able to make that 17% or whatever that may be worth the rest of the grind and the hard work. So that's very cool. In those moments as an entrepreneur where that 80% where it's tough and it requires a lot of discipline, and there's probably moments where there's lows where you doubt the process or you don't see the light, like how would you say that part of your journey has been, and how have you helped yourself kind of push through the darker times or the more difficult times when all you have is the vision, not necessarily the tangible evidence right in front of you to prove that it'll all work out in the end?
Yeah, thanks for asking that, Carol. I think that's a really, really important answer. I think the pat answer is most people would say you need to dig deep and figure out what your why is, and just focus on your why. Except I found that for a lot of people that I've coached, consulted, or worked with, that their why also becomes their excuse. For example, if, I don't have kids myself, so I can't possibly relate, but I've worked with a lot of people. I had a lot of partners with kids and families, and they tell me often that their why is their family. They go because they want to give a good life for their family. They want to be a great example for their kids. But then when we got to get to work on a Saturday, we're traveling, or we have to be in an event where we're speaking, and they need to bail out because they need to go to their kid's function. That's using your why as an excuse. So I don't think the why is all of it. I think it's part of it. But what I will impart on this is when things get shitty, they get dark, they suck, and it's time to think about quitting, that's when I double down. And this is a strategy I actually borrowed from day traders, believe it or not. Working with day traders, whether it's commodities, cryptocurrencies, whatever, there's a strategy called double down on the dip. Have you ever heard of that before?
No.
Okay, so you double down on the dip. So inevitably, the value of everything goes down at some point. It can't always be record highs. So inevitably, the value of something goes down. This is what day traders do: is they analyze the patterns and they're looking for the dip, which is the absolute bottom of the value of something. So for trading oil, for example, what is the absolute bottom of the price of a barrel of oil? And then when it hits that, which generally is an ultimate low for a lot of people, right? If you're investing in that stuff, when it hits that dip, it sucks because you probably lost money. Or think about it, in a job, if the price of oil goes down and you work for an oil and gas company, well, they start laying off people. That's an ultimate low, and that's the dip. That's the time to double down, right? So when things are at their lowest and they're at their hardest, that's likely the sign of a breakthrough, because that's what traders are looking for. They're now looking for that break of the trend, which is all of a sudden an uptake, right? So doubling down on the dip means when things are at absolute worst, they're at their lowest. How much worse can they get?
Right.
That's the time to double down. So that traders will double down on the dip. So when I'm sitting there and I'm feeling sorry for myself and watching Netflix and have a tub of Ben and Jerry's sitting there and life sucks, I snap, because that's when I realize this is the dip. I need to double down on the dip. And all of a sudden I start to pull myself out, and the recovery is 10 times faster than you could ever believe. So when things get shitty, think about your why and why you're actually doing it. But chances are most people haven't gone through the exercise to really define what that is and really have it come from the source of their soul. If you have, that's great. That'll work for you. But until you figure that out, double down on the dip. When things get really crappy, man, that's the time to go all in, because you got nothing else to lose.
Love it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And thanks for explaining that expression. That I had heard it, but didn't know how it applied. So very powerful. Cool. And so in your experience as well throughout the years of working with different people, is there someone that stands out more than the rest that has either been a mentor or someone that you used as a point of reference to kind of inspire yourself on your own journey?
100%, except it's not just one person, Carol. It's a lot of people.
Yeah.
I like to borrow aspects from a lot of different people that inspire me in lots of different ways. I have a colleague and a good personal friend. He's built a multiple 8-figure business on cash. He's done only cash. He's bought real estate, all cash. He went out of pocket to start his business, but he runs it all in cash. That part of it inspires me. I love that aspect of it. And then I've got a former partner of mine. We're really good friends. We've been friends since high school. He's found a way to balance spending time with his wife and his daughter and running a full-time business. And he's been able to figure out how to manage it. So I pull that aspect of it. And then I've got another friend, again, another former partner, personal friend of mine I've known for a very, very long time. And he's had his life plan from day one. I remember, being roommates with him when we were in our 20s. He told me what his life plan is. I'm going to grow my company to XYZ dollars, and I'm going to have a vacation home, and I'm going to build my dream house. Then I'm going to get a wife, and then I'm going to have a kid. But guess what he did? And it's almost to the day. And I love that planning aspect of it. He's just so particular, and he lives his actual life plan. I've rarely seen that. So I'm inspired by so many people all the time, every day, and it's all little aspects of it. So I wouldn't say there isn't any one person that, hey, that's the guy for me, because there's lots of points in my life where people have contributed to it, either knowingly or unknowingly, and I've borrowed that either as inspiration or something to model, and then try to form that into my life.
Cool. Awesome. So what are you up to these days, and where can people reach you if they want to have further conversation with you or dive into the wisdom that you've obviously acquired throughout the years?
Awesome. Yeah, that's I'm pretty easy to find on the internet, Carol. First and foremost, the best place to reach me and find anything I'm up to is at stacyrichter.com. STACY, there's no E, STACYRICHTER, Richter, like the scale, Richter scale. stacyrichter.com. And I'm posting a ton of free content and insights, and it's more than just insights. It's not things I've read in a textbook or things I borrowed from a podcast. I'm putting my own insight and experience into a lot of these things. So, subscribe to the blog there. I'm currently writing a book that's just not published yet. I've got the drafts done, and it's called Wrong Answers, Right Questions, the business owner's guide to marketing their business in the 21st century. And it's a no bullshit, no holds barred. This is how business needs to get done, and you're not doing it that way. So I got a book, and then we've got a movie coming out. We don't have a release date yet, called Game Changer. And it's basically the secret for entrepreneurs.
Wonderful.
It's a collection of super high-end entrepreneurs talking about different aspects of being a business owner and the mindset around it. It's a little more tactical than the secret, so it's called Game Changer. All of this can be found on my website, stacyrichter.com. But if you just want the little quick hits, make sure you follow me on Instagram. There's some really cool stuff going on with Instagram these days, and I'm pumping out a ton of insights. I'm not called the Marketing Mindbender for nothing. So there's some really cool stuff. So my Instagram handle is Stacy, STACY, __ Richter, RICHTER.
Wonderful. Fantastic. Well, it's definitely worth checking out for sure. And thank you so much, Stacy, for being on our show today. Everything you've been able to share with us can apply to anybody in any walk of life. I think that it's important for us to talk about the different things that you've done throughout your life and the things you've learned and grown from. But really, at the end of the day, it's all those experiences put together that has brought you to where you're at today, and being able to share in the wisdom you've acquired as a result of that. So thank you for being here and willing to share all of that with us.
Oh, yeah, thanks a lot, Carol. I hope to live up to all the gratitude. This has been a great conversation, and looking forward to watching a lot more on E3TV.
Fantastic. So we'll be posting all the links that Stacy mentioned on this show, and so you can go check him out there. And thank you, viewers, for joining us, and have a great day.